have two friends on the spectrum. Both of them actually got diagnosed only a couple of years ago, and one of them I've known for 10 years. So that's quite interesting where, the facts are the same, it's the same relationship, but then you understand it from a different way. You gotta challenge your assumptions and be a bit humble in a way as well, that what you know is not necessarily always correct or always the best. People on the autism spectrum, they can be extremely skilled in their trade, but then you're suddenly being put into this different context where you have to sit in an interview, and then you're not being judged on the criteria that you use for the job.
Welcome to the Metautism podcast, where we're diving into the vibrant world of autism and championing inclusive education and employment. Join us as we explore innovative strategies, share inspiring stories, and analyze groundbreaking initiatives that celebrate differences and advocate for a future of equal opportunities. Let's get started. Hello. How are you? Welcome to another episode of Metautism podcast. I'm your host, Clara, and I'm super excited that I'm speaking with Jakob Håkonsson today. Jakob is an experienced designer at Virsabi, a Danish company that helps other companies, other associations, and projects to gain customers' attention, to train their employees, and deliver engaging experiences using virtual reality headsets and smartphones. They're also invaluable partner on this project, Green ASC VET Metautism project. And today, Jakob will help us understand what XR, extended reality, is and how it can help people on the autism spectrum find their calling. Jakob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Maybe we can start by asking, what is your role as an experienced designer? And then you can maybe give us a bit more context on the company itself.
Yeah, definitely. So an experienced designer, it's here in my role, it's quite close to a product designer. So when we deliver a virtual reality product, it needs this holistic view of everything from the concept so we sketch the idea, what do we want, we start prototyping it, and then step by step in an iterative process to the final delivery. So I'm basically there as part of the whole way from the beginning, where we draw on whiteboards. Is this what would you like? What is the real problem here we're trying to solve? All the way through the end. Then I'm more on the concept phase, and then we have, of course, developers who actually build it in the headsets.
Okay, so maybe we can also give an example of projects you did at Virsabi. So you made a conflict resolution simulation in virtual reality, where people can, for example, they are in store and they can have a conversation with maybe a bit more difficult client, and also other, for example, solution you have is for training finance union representatives for difficult conversations with their bosses, colleagues who are laid off, etc. And that is all using virtual reality. So what is the impact of these solutions that you built, and what type of skills do they focus on?
Right, yeah, so both of those examples are examples of what we call soft skills. So it's interpersonal relationships, and how do you navigate and what do you do there. So the first you mentioned, it's a project we did for a DSB, which is the Danish railway provider, and their employees who are selling tickets to people. And the person selling tickets, they will always be the face of the company sometimes, and then people who are unhappy for whatever reason, they come and they yell at them, and there's a lot of conflict that happens. And in the first iteration of this project that we did it in the sort of the ticket shop, but we realized that people are protected behind glass. They work there for a long time. They build up this confidence, and they don't mind. So that was good learning, and we took that further, and we realized that also across the street in 7-Eleven, people are also selling tickets, and they are also getting these angry customers. And the people working there are very different. They can be people who are 18, 19 years old, could be their first job, and they've never really been yelled at, And then suddenly they come into this context where they can be alone in a store, and someone can come who has a very threatening demeanor. So how do you prepare them for something like that? And by doing this, so we reconstructed a 7-Eleven store. We put them behind the counter. We made this character who comes up to you, he yells at you, his ticket is, the train is cancelled, or whatever's happening, and you can't really solve that. You just have to stand your ground, and maybe you can say something like this, you can say something like that. So we provide them with options. What could you do in this context? But most of all, we are exposing them to that situation in a context that's very safe. They are not in danger. Like, they are just wearing the headset. They can take them off if they want. They can do this for 2 minutes, and then they can discuss with the colleagues, how was that for you? What would you do? Have you experienced something like that? And they have this sort of shared experience that they can relate to and laugh about as well. You can really, get this safe experience that still feels very real, and you can actually train those skills that you can then apply in real life.
Yes, and you said it feels very real. So how does virtual reality, for example, and experiences in VR influence person's emotions? How do you build it so it's not too overstimulating?
So that's a great question. And I think it's funny with our brains, they are very quick to accept something that's not real. So even if the style is very cartoonish, as soon as you're in there for a bit and you can interact and you notice that your actions have an impact on that world, you actually buy it. You sort of, okay, this is the world now. And then, so nowadays you can make things that are very realistic, sort of photorealism, avatars and so on, but it's actually not always needed, because the emotional impact is huge already from something that are a bit close to cartoon characters. And then when you're working with this kind of thing where, it's an angry customer, it feels very real, then sometimes we set that level of stylization of how, or cartooniness, we set that lower, because then it's not as overwhelming to you. It's not that you really, you don't get traumatized from this. You get maybe a bit shocked, you get your pulse up, but then it leaves like that. It's funny, we tried to find this balance, and there's one example where he, towards the end, where he gets angry and he leans over the desk. So he sort of puts his hand on and then he comes at you. And it was interesting to see that people who tried it, they actually physically took a step back when he did that. So they were like, okay, this starts to feel very real. But then that's as far as it goes. He's not going to come and punch you. He's not going to come and really sort of assault you in any way. So that's what's good. When we create these trainings, we set exactly the limits. We are in full control of what's going to happen. And as I said previously, it's an iterative process. So we can, throughout, we can sort of move that. Should we push a bit more here? Should we dial it down here a bit more? Through user testing and through sort of this process and the communication together with the customer, we can find that balance in a way that's very hard to do of course, in real life with real customers. They are going to act unpredictably, but also in sort of traditional role-playing games, which is the alternative that you actually, you meet a real person who pretends to be this angry customer. That's going to be different each time. Whereas here we make a solution that has been tried and tested and it's the same for everyone, and that has that perfect balance. And I think with these kind of immersive technologies, there is a responsibility on the designer and the developer. They share the responsibility of making something that has a fitting level. If you make something for a broad audience like we do, we have to be very conscious of that.
Yes, of course. And you said when we spoke previously that you are designing for inclusivity. Now, you mentioned also experimentation. So how does your user research that designing for inclusivity looks like, especially if we're speaking about autism?
Yeah, so some software companies, maybe they have like one product and that's based on something that they have found frustrating and they're trying to change something, and it's based on their experience. Basically, they do something that they would like to use, and that's fine, but that's not always a fitting sort of strategy to take. So we have many projects for many different clients, many different target groups, really. So it's really important that we get to understand who are they and what is important to them, and what makes sense to build, and what should we focus on. We use a lot of co-design, so we bring in the customer and we sketch together. Maybe they write it on Post-its, and I just draw it on a whiteboard simultaneously and ask, what about this? So we really try to bring them in the design process and ask and then understand them, because they are usually quite far from us. We reach markets that have not used extended reality technologies before, so they don't know anything about the technology, but at the same time we don't really know anything about that market, warehouse staff. How do you pack a pallet? I don't know because I haven't worked in a warehouse. So I need to ask and I need to find out. And it's really a collaborative process that we try to build. I like to say that design is communication. We're trying to solve something, communicate something, but visually instead, or through audio or so on through design. Communication is key. And I think that's also going to be the something that comes back into this project related to autism, that we really need to understand each other. So we need to bring these people in, and we need to talk, and we need to come up with what makes the most sense to do.
Yeah, you are also speaking about diversity in the workplace. Maybe people who you are speaking with are not directly your colleagues, but they are working on a project with you. And many studies have actually shown that diversity in the workplace brings so much more creativity, progress, better solutions, and so on. But you also have, for example, two friends on the autism spectrum, and I want to know how do they impact your life or influence you as an experienced designer?
Most of all, I get reminded again of the need for communication. And how do we do that in the best way? So, like I said, I have two friends on spectrum. Both of them actually got diagnosed only a couple of years ago, and one of them I known for 10 years. So that's quite interesting, where the facts are the same, it's the same relationship, but then you understand it from a different way. They're also very different people, just personality-wise and everything like that. It's very different, and that brings back to the old saying, like, if you've met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism. So I think again, it's you need to communicate, and while doing so, challenge your assumptions, because something that I've learned a lot in actually both in my professional and private life, is that just because something is different from what I think doesn't mean that it's worse. It's just a different idea. So with design, I like to not put too much ego into it. Of course, I have my background, I have my expertise, and I stand by opinions that are based on that. But I don't want to make something like a darling that I refuse to let go just because it's mine. So you gotta challenge your assumptions and maybe be a bit humble in a way as well, that what you know is not necessarily always correct or always the best, especially when you're working with a target group that's even more different from you than you think. So you just got to keep that open mind and the discussions open and non-judgmental.
Actually shown that you need to be humble, that you need to have empathy and be willing to work and grow yourself, of course. And how can we in everyday life think more like an experienced designer with those traits that I mentioned?
What I talked about with darlings, we take that to the extreme where we say, kill your darlings. It's like the things that you come up with, just because you made it doesn't make it good. And that's very hard for us as humans to think, because we always favor what we have made. We always think our kids are the best. What they draw, that's beautiful. We put that up in the fridge. They are amazing. That extends to our ideas. What we come up with, we have a sort of a sentimental value towards. So I think as a designer, you really get that sort of hammered in your head, that take a step back, try to think about this objectively. Is this necessarily the best solution, or could this be done a different way? And I think that mindset is good to take with you into a personal life, to just challenge your assumptions and be fine with the fact that something is different than what you just thought. And that also helps your peace of mind.
That is a great message. And now let's get back a bit on the XR. So we mostly spoke about VR as something that is maybe the most common virtual reality headsets. Now we also seen Apple Vision Pro and other advances in various headsets and changing our everyday life, our reality, let's say that way. But what is XR, extended reality?
Extended reality, that's basically the term that covers the whole spectrum, from virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, where things are sort of a bit of both. Now Apple comes out and they say that it's actually not called VR anymore, it's called a spatial computer. Okay.
Yeah, they want to stand out.
Yeah, so we have to see, but I guess a spatial computer is now also in the XR spectrum. It just covers everything where virtual content and real content sort of intersect and overlaps. And then, of course, you have virtual reality. It's been around for ages. I mean, NASA has been using it for like half a century. But the difference nowadays is that while before it was a big heavy box that's connected to a cable running to a best computer that you can buy at the time, all the way down to basically just a small plastic shell that has everything built in and is suddenly way more affordable. So it's the technology's been there, the findings have been there, but suddenly it has a new potential because it can actually reach people a completely different way. So for example, the Meta Quest, that's the most popular one right now. That's about 300 euros to buy, and it's not so that everyone can buy it, but some people can. And for companies, it's not such a big cost if you consider to use that instead of other types of training. So instead of training centers that everyone has to drive or fly to participate in some kind of thing, you can make that digitally and just in this goggle. So with VR, what's very important is, or what's very new nowadays is that it's actually affordable. And then Apple enters the market, and of course, their headset is also very expensive, like most Apple products are. But with time, that's also going to come down and it will be more consumer friendly. Then we have augmented reality, and of course, everyone has a smartphone nowadays, more or less. So that's built in because augmented reality, the example that most people remember is Pokemon Go, that you can go out and you can find Pokemons in real life and you see them on a screen, but they're also in the real world. That has potential, but also not just in sort of in gaming sectors. There could be apps where you look into a magical portal, a window into another world. You can get a new context, or maybe you can have information that's on your phone, but it points to things in real life. So imagine a GPS navigation where you actually see where you need to go on your screen. And then mixed reality, that's a bit of both. If it's basically if it understands the real world. So let's say you have a Pokemon running around on your screen, as long as it's just running on the floor, that's augmented reality. But if it suddenly understands, hey, this is a sofa, and it runs behind the sofa, so it disappears and it pops out, and then the real world and the virtual world are mixed and understand each other. Basically, XR covers that whole spectrum. So there's the conceptual terms, but then there's also the hardware, whatever is providing that to people.
So Metautism project lasts until 2026. It's a 3-year-long project, and Jakob and Virsabi will help the project to develop an XR solution that will provide people on the autism spectrum with some things that will help them decide which career choice would they choose. So maybe Jakob, you can describe it a bit in more detail.
I think in one way I have to say that actually I cannot describe exactly what it's going to be, because with the technology going so fast, it could be that something is technically feasible in half a year that we just didn't think of now. But I think in either case, there are some things you can find. So something we talked about last time as well is that there is a difference between the skills you learn in your education and then the skills you need in an interview. It's very odd that you go to an interview and then you're not being judged on the criteria that you use for the job, or in another way, like what you're good at. That doesn't come up in an interview. So there's this weird situation there. People on the autism spectrum, they can be amazing developers and I mean, not just that, they can be extremely skilled in their trade. But then you're suddenly being put into this different context where you have to sit in an interview. And that's just odd. So what we will build here is basically something that prepares you for that process. So in the interview setting, if I ask you, tell me about yourself, what does that mean? How much should you share? What is oversharing? What is fitting context? Like all of those questions you can partly train, but you can partly just try to go different ways. Because again, to compare with the conflict management app we did, it provides a safe space that you can try different things and you can experience something and just mentally prepare for it in a way that you can't in real life. Because of course, when you go to the interview, then the question is, will you get the job or not? So there's always this sort of thing that's at stake. So of course you can't just try to suddenly, I don't know, in Scandinavia, we're quite sort of huggy people. We come up and give someone a hug if we just met them once. So what do you do that with the person you're interviewing, or do you shake hands, or like all of those small things you can actually get a feel for and try. What we will make in broad terms is this simulation where you enter an interview and you can just try, you can train, you can test some things. But most of all, you can just experience that and become comfortable. And hopefully that will contribute to the whole issue of employment. How do we bring in more people on the autism spectrum into the job market.
In the end, maybe you can give us example of, or maybe tell us how will this solution that you create make before and after?
I predict that the biggest impact will be on confidence. Just, do you feel prepared for this? Do you feel like you're in control? Do you feel like you know what to do, what could happen, and how do you react to that? And I think if they do that, then the rest they already have. I mean, they have their education, they have their training, they know the rest of the things for the job. But coming across as confident, believing in yourself, that shows the interviewer. And I think that increases your chance of getting employed.
Amazing. This is a fantastic conclusion to this episode. So Jakob, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks. It was really nice to be here.
I'm glad to hear that. And of course, thank you to the Erasmus Plus program of European Union for funding this project. All opinions are our own. Please follow or subscribe on YouTube or your favorite listening platform. And until the next time, bye-bye.